there's a lot of different ways to approach soloing on this tune. But the first thing is, of course, is this little... You could also play it. And then the second one is... And since that little trill thing occurs so many times in the melody, you might want to incorporate it in your soloing. And then maybe on the next one, something like that might be cool. Or you could, for different levels of people, you might just try working from the chord shape. This is a G minor triad, and I'm approaching each degree of the chord a half step below. And then you would do the same thing on the A, and the same thing on the D, back to the G. So those are two different ways you can approach soloing on this tune. I would recommend getting really comfortable with the arpeggios, because as we say, Gypsy jazz is more about arpeggios than it is about scales. And that sounds pretty gypsy right there, and that's just the arpeggio of a G chord, G minor, without adding the six. You can add the six later, which really gives you that gypsy flavor, but you don't need it. Same with the A. It's an A7, so I would play the 7. And then the D. This extra little note here, that's a flat 9, which turns the D, essentially, in Django's world, into a diminished chord. So that's a huge thing for Gypsy jazz, is to turn your dominant 5 chord into a diminished. So again, to review that, we're adding an E flat to a D7, which gives us an E flat diminished. It doesn't change anything else in the D except the root. And those are the things that I would use for soloing over this. I would maybe try playing the whole tune like this. You see what I've done? I've applied this two-finger approach to each degree of the chord as the chords change. So another thing that you want to do to add the gypsy flavors to your guitar playing would be to try to get more of these ornamentations. Things like this little trill. That is a nice little trill with a slide down back to the note that you started on, and this is one of the notes in the chord. So you could do that on all the notes in the chord of a G minor. To do that slowly, and I'm picking and then hammering, I think. And then you would do it on the A7 chord. And then the D7 chord. So that little bit there, that was a little chromatic movement. You know, a chromatic is just every fret, and then the minor third, and then the resolving to the root of the chord. So you could, as a beginner or even an intermediate gypsy jazz player, you might want to walk through the arpeggios. And then ornament each degree of the arpeggio. and then the next chord, and then the next chord. And then I would try to resolve at a certain point back to the one chord, because that always gives you a sense of lyricism and a sense of really being in charge of what you're doing instead of just running licks. Gypsy jazz isn't about licks, it's about lyricism and about really making a musical statement, almost like a composition, which is what improvisation should be. So those are two different things you can do. You can arpeggiate and then ornament. Other ornaments that you could do would be simply to maybe, instead of doing that, you could just hammer on to each degree of the triad. You could do that, or you could come down to each degree of the chord from a scale tone. You could try bending some notes. You could try playing some chromatics. You could try playing maybe some tremolo on the chords. Try all kinds of things.